stop for a moment. That uneasy feeling you've been carrying may deserve more attention than you've given it. There are seasons in life when nothing looks wrong on the surface, yet deep inside, something keeps warning you to stay alert. You cannot explain it. You cannot prove it. Still, the feeling refuses to leave. Many of the greatest battles begin long before anyone else can see them. They start quietly, a sudden change in someone's attitude, doors that unexpectedly close, confusion where there was once clarity, small moments that seem unrelated until they form a pattern. History and human nature reveal that unseen dangers often appear before visible conflict ever begins. The wisest people were not those who lived in fear. They were those who learned to recognize the signs without allowing fear to control their route. I am C.S. Lewis, and today we are going to explore why certain moments of discomfort should never be ignored, how discernment is different from suspicion, and why calm wisdom is one of the greatest forms of protection a person can possess. Along the way, you'll discover surprising truths about human behavior, hidden struggles that many overlook, and timeless principles that have helped faithful people stand firm, even when they faced quiet opposition. Some of these insights are rarely discussed, yet they can completely change the way you see the challenges unfolding around you. Stay with me until the very end, because the final lesson may become the one truth you remember whenever life feels uncertain again. This message is not meant to fill your heart with panic. It is meant to replace confusion with clarity, fear with wisdom, and anxiety with quiet confidence. Welcome to *Lewis Legacy, where we explore timeless truth, deep faith, and enduring wisdom for everyday life. If you value thoughtful messages that strengthen your mind and spirit, subscribe to the channel and join our growing community. Now, let's begin. 1. Something shifted quietly in the background of your life. Relationships once steady now feel unfamiliar, as though a hidden current moves beneath ordinary moments. Conversations turn colder without clear reason, and familiar voices carry an unexpected weight. Certain people appear distant, while others seem unusually critical, leaving thoughts unsettled long after words end. Moments of opportunity quietly close, not through clear failure, but through subtle resistance that cannot easily be named. A sense of unseen pressure grows, as though life itself shifts direction without announcing reasons. In such seasons, clarity fades, yet awareness sharpens in unexpected ways that point toward deeper patterns beneath surface events. History records similar passages in the lives of thinkers and believers who later described moments when reality felt quietly rearranged. Such intervals rarely announce themselves with certainty, yet they often reveal truths about direction, alignment, and inner steadiness. C.S. Lewis' reflection often points toward this quiet reality, where external noise masks internal transformation, unfolding beneath awareness. During such periods, interpretation becomes difficult, and ordinary explanations fail to capture the deeper movement at work. Yet within that uncertainty, perception grows stronger, guiding attention towards subtle signals previously ignored. Life appears reorganized without announcement, inviting patience, reflection, and careful discernment. Many later recognize such moments as turning points, though recognition arrives only after clarity returns. In retrospect, patterns emerge that were invisible during the experience itself, forming a quiet map of change. Such mapping of experience becomes essential for understanding direction, especially when certainty feels absent. Awareness grows not through control, but through attentive observation of subtle shifts in human connection and circumstance. Such moments invite a quieter form of wisdom that steadies thought and prevents reaction from becoming confusion. Within that stillness, understanding forms gradually, guiding the next step with calm, assurance, quiet, steady, light, A smile does not always reveal the truth beneath it. Human nature is far more layered than it appears on the surface, and intentions are often hidden behind ordinary expressions. There are moments when growth in one person creates discomfort in another, not because harm is openly intended, but because internal comparisons begin to rise quietly within the mind. Confidence, peace, and progress can unintentionally expose insecurities that were previously unnoticed. Throughout history, many individuals who moved toward clarity and purpose discovered that not every response to their progress was supportive. Some reactions were subtle, a shift in tone, a sudden distance, a quiet resistance to what once felt natural. These patterns rarely announce themselves clearly, yet they leave a lasting impression on those who pay attention. C.S. Lewis often reflected on the complexity of human behavior, noting that the heart can hold admiration and discomfort at the same time, even without full awareness of its own motives. Envy does not always appear as hostility. More often, it hides behind ordinary gestures, polite words, or silent withdrawal. This makes it difficult to interpret intentions with certainty. That is why wisdom requires something deeper than reaction. It requires discernment, the ability to observe without immediately assigning fear or accusation. Suspicion narrows the mind, while discernment keeps it steady and aware. Not every shift in behavior signals danger, and not every change in atmosphere carries hidden harm. Some moments simply reveal the fragile nature of human emotion when confronted with difference or growth. Wisdom allows space for understanding, without rushing toward conclusions. It encourages observation without distortion, and patience without assumption. In that balance, clarity begins to form quietly, guiding perception toward steadier ground, where interpretation becomes more grounded and less shaped by uncertainty or miscast. Opposition rarely arrives by accident. It often appears at the very edge of meaningful change, just before a person steps into something greater than their present understanding. Throughout history, moments of resistance have been closely tied to moments of transition, where difficulty and opportunity seem to arrive in the same season. The timing is rarely comfortable, yet it is often revealing. There are periods in life when progress feels strangely opposed, as though unseen weight presses against forward movement. Plans become delayed. Efforts require more strength than expected. Doors that once seemed open begin to resist. In such moments, it is easy to assume that direction itself is wrong, yet experience shows a different pattern. Many who later reached meaningful outcomes first walked through phases of pressure that tested not only their endurance, but also their inner conviction. C.S. Lewis often observed that struggle has a way of refining intention, stripping away what is temporary and exposing what is essential. In that refining process, character is shaped quietly. Patience grows where frustration once lived. Strength develops where doubt once held ground. These transformations rarely feel significant in the moment, yet they become the foundation for what follows. Pressure has a strange relationship with growth. It does not always signal failure. Sometimes it signals preparation. Just as weight strengthens structure, resistance can strengthen resolve. What feels like delay may, in deeper reality, be alignment forming beneath unseen layers of experience. Many who look back on difficult chapters later recognize that those very challenges prepared them for outcomes they could not yet understand. The path forward is often shaped not only by ease, but by endurance, through moments that demanded more than comfort could provide. In that endurance, a deeper capacity begins to form, one that carries a person further than hesitation ever could. Fear and discernment often feel similar at first, yet they lead the mind in completely different directions. Fear rises quickly, tightening thoughts and pushing the heart toward immediate reaction. It narrows attention until everything appears urgent, even when clarity has not yet formed. In that state, decisions are shaped by pressure rather than understanding. And what follows is often confusion rather than resolution. Discernment moves in a different way. It does not rush. It observes. It allows space for reality to reveal itself without forcing meaning onto incomplete information. Where fear amplifies uncertainty, discernment patiently waits for patterns to become visible. It values stillness over impulse and reflection over reaction. In that stillness, understanding begins to settle with greater accuracy. C.S. Lewis often explored the inner life of human decision-making, noting that the mind becomes unreliable when overwhelmed by emotional turbulence. Calm observation, on the other hand, brings order to thought. It creates distance between event and response, allowing truth to emerge without distortion. This distance is not detachment from reality, but a clearer engagement with it. Many mistakes are not born from lack of knowledge, but from speed. When reaction comes before reflection, perception becomes unstable. Yet when a person slows down, even slightly, space opens for wiser judgment to form. In that space, emotional intensity loses its authority, and clarity begins to take its place. Inner peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of steadiness within it. It allows the mind to remain grounded, even when circumstances feel uncertain. From that grounded place, choices become less reactive and more intentional. Discernment grows in environments where silence is not avoided, but embraced long enough for understanding to surface naturally, guiding action with quiet precision rather than emotional urgency mounts. Some of the most intense struggles do not appear in the outer world at all. They take place silently within the mind, where no one else can see the weight being carried. External challenges are often easier to recognize because they have shape and structure, but internal battles are formless. They move through thought, memory, and perception, slowly influencing how reality itself is understood. Doubt often arrives quietly, questioning even the most certain foundations. It does not always destroy immediately. Instead, it weakens confidence over time, causing hesitation where there was once clarity. Discouragement follows in similar ways, not by confronting directly, but by draining energy and making effort feel heavier than before. In such moments, even simple tasks can feel distant and difficult to begin. Isolation intensifies these internal struggles. When thoughts remain unshared, they begin to echo within themselves, growing louder in silence. Confusion then enters, blending perception until direction becomes unclear. Together, these internal forces can shape experience more powerfully than any external circumstance. They alter interpretation, which then alters response, which eventually shapes action. C.S. Lewis often reflected on how unseen thoughts influence visible life more than most people realize. What happens inwardly eventually becomes the lens through which everything else is viewed. This is why internal struggle can feel more overwhelming than outward opposition, even when nothing outside has changed. Unlike external resistance, which can sometimes be identified and addressed directly, internal battles operate beneath awareness. They do not announce themselves clearly. Instead, they shift perception subtly, making strong things feel weak and simple things feel complicated. Over time, this internal environment becomes the true battlefield, shaping not only decisions, but also the way strength itself is understood and experienced within the quiet boundaries of thought and reflection. For peace carries a quiet authority that does not need to announce itself, yet it is often felt more strongly than words or actions. In some moments, the calm presence of a person reveals contrasts in others that were previously hidden. Confidence, when grounded and steady, can unintentionally highlight uncertainty in those who are still unsettled within themselves. It does not create that insecurity, but it brings it into awareness. Kindness is often misunderstood in similar ways. When offered freely, without expectation or condition. It can be difficult for those shaped by suspicion or past experience to interpret correctly. Instead of being received as strength, it may sometimes be viewed through confusion, as though sincerity itself is unfamiliar. Yet kindness remains unchanged by perception. It continues quietly, without needing recognition. Integrity holds a different kind of weight. It does not argue or demand attention, yet it establishes a standard that cannot easily be ignored. In environments where dishonesty has become familiar, honesty can feel uncomfortable, simply because it reflects what has been neglected. C.S. Lewis often reflected on how truth behaves in this way, not by attacking falsehood, but by existing in contrast to it. Humility becomes essential in such moments. It prevents the heart from turning difference into superiority. It keeps strength from becoming pride. Staying humble allows a person to remain steady without reacting to misunderstanding or resistance. It protects inner balance when external reactions are unclear or uneven. There is also a deeper wisdom in refusing revenge. Reacting in anger may feel justified in the moment, yet it often binds a person to the very conflict they wish to escape. Letting go of retaliation preserves clarity. It allows time and truth to work in ways that immediate reaction cannot control. In that restraint, strength is not diminished, but refined, becoming quieter, steadier, and far more enduring than any response driven by hurt or impulse passions. The mind is often shaped long before actions ever take form. Thoughts, once planted, begin to influence perception in subtle ways that are not immediately noticed. What a person repeatedly focuses on gradually becomes the framework through which decisions are made. In this sense, the inner world quietly directs the outer one, even when the process feels invisible. Negative voices do not always remain external. If they are repeated often enough, they begin to echo internally, slowly becoming part of the thought structure itself. Over time, what was once heard from outside can start to sound like personal belief. This is why attention requires careful guarding, not through fear, but through awareness of how influence operates beneath surface thinking. C.S. Lewis often explored how easily the human mind absorbs surrounding impressions without realizing their long-term effect. The direction of thought is rarely determined in a single moment. It is shaped gradually through what is allowed to remain present. For this reason, attention becomes one of the most valuable inner resources a person possesses. Guarding the mind does not mean withdrawing from life, but choosing carefully what deserves mental space. Not every argument requires participation, and not every conflict requires response. Some situations lose their power when they are not continuously fed with reaction. In that restraint, clarity has room to return. Avoiding unnecessary conflict preserves mental stability. It prevents the mind from being pulled into cycles that drain focus and distort perspective. Wisdom often appears in the ability to pause before reacting, allowing understanding to form before response is given. Emotional reactions may feel immediate and strong, yet they are not always aligned with clarity. Choosing wisdom over impulse creates a steadier inner foundation. It allows decisions to emerge from reflection rather than pressure, keeping thought aligned with what is lasting rather than what is temporary in feeling or circumstance filling. There is a form of strength that does not announce itself. It does not demand attention, nor does it seek recognition from others. It develops quietly, often in periods when nothing appears to be happening on the surface. Yet beneath that stillness, something essential is being shaped. Not every challenge requires visible response. Some situations are not resolved through immediate action, but through inward strengthening. Silence in such moments is not absence of progress, but a different kind of movement altogether. It allows space for clarity to form without pressure or distortion from external noise. Prayer, in its simplest form, becomes a return to alignment when the mind is unsettled. It gathers scattered thought into focus and restores a sense of direction that emotion alone cannot provide. Reflection serves a similar role, allowing experience to be examined without urgency, where understanding grows gradually rather than abruptly. Learning continues, even when it is not visible to others. It often happens in private moments of attention, where knowledge is absorbed without recognition. Self-control, too, develops in unseen decisions, in choices made when no one is watching, where restraint becomes a quiet discipline rather than a public display. C.S. Lewis often observed that the most meaningful forms of preparation are rarely recognized at the time they are taking place. They do not carry outward signs of progress, yet they build the foundation for future resilience. What appears still may, in fact, be deeply active beneath the surface of experience. Invisibility does not reduce value. In many cases, it protects the process from distraction and premature judgment. Growth that is not exposed to constant observation can develop with greater depth and stability. Over time, these hidden layers of preparation become the strength that supports action when it is finally required, long after the silent work has already been completed within the unseen now. Parts of life and thought, history, often reveals a pattern that is easy to overlook in the present moment. Those who later came to be remembered for their clarity of purpose and lasting influence were not always met with ease at the beginning of their journey. In many cases, their path included resistance that tested their resolve long before any visible outcome appeared. Opposition was rarely the final word in their story. It often served as an early chapter, shaping their understanding of endurance and refining their sense of direction. What carried them forward was not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of patience. That patience allowed time for understanding to deepen rather than collapse under pressure. C.S. Lewis often reflected on how wisdom grows slowly, especially in those who learn to endure without abandoning their principles. Faith, in its truest sense, becomes more than belief. It becomes a steady commitment to continue moving even when circumstances do not yet reflect clarity. Many who walked this path did not focus their attention on resistance itself, but on the responsibility they believed they were called to fulfill. In doing so, their energy remained directed toward purpose rather than distraction. Enemies, opposition, or misunderstanding did not become the center of their attention. Instead, their focus stayed anchored in something deeper, something that did not shift with external reaction. That inward stability allowed them to continue forward without being consumed by what stood against them. Their examples suggest that progress is not always measured by immediate success, but by continued movement in the presence of challenge. What matters most is not how quickly obstacles disappear, but whether direction remains intact while they are still present. In that quiet persistence, strength takes shape in a way that time eventually reveals, long after the difficult moments have passed into reflection and understanding. The true measure of protection is often found not in external defenses, but in the inner manner through which a person responds to what they encounter. Events themselves are only part of the story. The greater influence lies in the interpretation given to those events, and the reaction that follows. In many situations, outcomes are shaped less by circumstance and more by the posture of the mind and heart in response to it. Bitterness can enter quietly when disappointment is left unexamined. It reshapes memory, turning experience into weight rather than understanding. Panic operates differently, but with similar effect. It compresses thought, narrowing perception until only urgency remains visible. In both cases, clarity is lost, and decisions begin to form under pressure rather than reflection. C.S. Lewis often considered how deeply human responses determine the direction of life. Wisdom, in contrast to reaction, creates space between event and action. In that space, understanding can form without distortion. It allows a person to remain present without being overwhelmed by what is temporary or uncertain. Staying alert does not require fear. Awareness can exist without anxiety, just as light can reveal without blinding. Fear distorts what it observes, while calm awareness sees more accurately because it is not rushing to conclusion. This balance is delicate, but essential. Steady choices, made repeatedly over time, become the structure upon which resilience is built. They may appear small in isolation, yet together they form a pattern of strength that is difficult to break. Faithfulness in response, even in ordinary moments, gradually shapes a life that is not easily shaken by fluctuation or pressure. In this way, protection is not a single act, but a continual discipline of response. It is formed in the quiet decision to remain thoughtful rather than reactive, grounded rather than scattered, and guided by wisdom rather than impulse. Even when circumstances press for a quicker and less considered reply do. In the end, the message remains simple and steady. Life is not defined by the pressure that surrounds it, but by the way a person chooses to move through that pressure. Every stage of confusion, resistance, or uncertainty carries within it an invitation to respond with clarity rather than panic, and with wisdom rather than fear. Opposition does not write the final chapter of any life. It may appear strongly for a time, but it does not determine direction unless it is allowed to shape reaction. What truly shapes the future is the inner decision to remain grounded, to think carefully, and to continue forward with patience, even when understanding is still forming. Prayer brings the mind back to calm when thoughts become heavy. Wisdom helps separate emotion from truth. Thoughtful action ensures that decisions are not made in haste, but in alignment with something deeper and more stable. When these elements work together, they create a quiet strength that is not easily shaken by external noise. There is always hope in choosing this path, not a loud or restless hope, but a steady one that grows stronger with time. It is the kind of hope that remains, even when circumstances are unclear, because it is built on direction rather than emotion. May your mind remain steady, your heart remain clear, and your steps remain guided by wisdom rather than fear. May you find strength in silence, clarity in reflection, and peace in every decision you make moving forward. If this message spoke to you in any way, like this video, subscribe to *Lewis Legacy, and share it with someone who may need encouragement today. Comment your thoughts below, and continue walking forward with courage, patience, and quiet strength.